Bob the builder was busy mending a broken central heating system. Muck was helping him. "I've finished the boiler," said Bob. "Now for the new hot water tank." "I'll get it for you," yelled Muck, happily. He rushed to pick the tank up from the floor. But in Muck's hurry, the pipes in his tipper fell out and rolled all over the road. "Sorry, Bob," said Muck. "I was only trying to help." "I know," smiled Bob. "Don't worry, I can manage." He picked up the tank and carried it into the house, where he quickly fixed it to the boiler. "Now it's time to check the pipes," said Bob. One of the pipes was blocked by a little bit of dirt. Bob blew down the pipe and the dirt popped out. Blurgerboo-boo-blul whistled the pipe, as Bob blew through it. "I like that," laughed Bob and blew again. "Tut-tut-tut parp." "Bob? Are you all right in there?" called Muck, anxiously. "Yes, I'm fine," Bob replied. "Listen to this, Muck. T-o-t-t-tut-too." Muck frowned. "What is it, a frog with a sore throat?" he asked. "No," said Bob, excitedly. "It's my bugle. Or it will be, when I've finished making it." "What's a bugle?" Muck asked. "It's a musical instrument," Bob explained. "You blow in one end and a loud noise comes out the other. Like this." And he gave another blast down the pipe. "Parp, t-t-i-t. Tut-tut." Back at the yard, Wendy was staring into space, looking very thoughtful. "What are you thinking?" asked Scoop. "Some friends of mine have just moved into a new house. And I'd really like to send them something special," Wendy told him. "The trouble is, I can't think of anything." Pilchard pushed her clockwork mouse towards Wendy. "That's very kind," Wendy said. "But I don't think my friends really need a clockwork mouse." Then Muck and Bob roared into the yard. "Guess what?" Muck yelled. "Bob's going to make a bugle." Bob hurried into his workshop and shut the door. The machines clustered outside. They could hear interesting bangs and clanks. Then, suddenly a loud parp made them all jump. Bob came striding out of his workshop, proudly waving his shiny new bugle. "How about this, then?" he said. He put the new bugle to his mouth and blew. Bloo-hoo-whoop-parp. "What's that awful noise?" cried Wendy, rushing out of her office with her hands clamped over her ears. "Shoo, Wendy," whispered Scoop. "It's Bob's new bugle and he thinks it's great." "It's terrible," cried Wendy. "I like it," rumbled Rolly. "You're cool, Bob." "Me, cool?" chuckled Bob. "Perhaps I could join a band." "You'll have to practice hard if you want to play in a band," said Rolly. "You're right," agreed Bob. "Can I practice?" "Yes, I can." Bob practiced his bugle all night long. Blah-hoo-diddly-diddly-do. "I want to go to sleep," wailed Muck. "Do you think we ought to tell Bob that we, don't really like it?" Lofty mumbled. Then he shook his head. "No, no. We don't want to upset him." "Hey, come on, you lot," rumbled Rolly. "Bob's having fun." The tired machines listened. As the loud bugle blasts slowly turned to weak toot-toots then. "One last pay-arp." "He's stopped," gasped Dizzy. "Thank goodness for that," yawned Muck. The next morning, Wendy was still trying to think of a special present for her friend's new house. "I hardly slept last night, worrying about it," she said. "We hardly slept last night because of Bob playing his bugle," grumbled Muck. "He'll be tired this morning," said Wendy. But Bob wasn't the slightest bit tired. He came strolling across the yard, playing the bugle. The terrible noise sounded like an elephant, blowing its nose. "Come on, Muck," Bob called. "We've got work to do." And as he walked into his workshop, he carefully put his bugle by the door. "Now's our chance, Lofty," said Scoop. "Grab the bugle." "Whoa," gulped Lofty, as he nervously extended his crane and hooked the bugle onto it. "Put it on the roof," said Dizzy. "Bob will never find it there." Carefully, Lofty put the bugle on the roof. But then Bird hopped over to the bugle and started to peck at it. The bugle rolled forwards. "Look out," cried Muck. The bugle rolled off the roof and landed slap-bang in Muck's scoop. "What was that?" called Bob, from the workshop. "Nothing," said Muck. "Come on, Muck," said Bob. "We've got to finish that central heating job." While Bob packed the last of his tools, Muck hunted around for somewhere to hide the bugle. Dizzy ran up to him and tipped her mixer forwards. "Stick it in here," she whispered. "Phew, what a relief," sighed Muck. But then disaster struck. "Oh, Dizzy," called Bob. "I'll need you too." Dizzy's face dropped. "Me?" she exclaimed. "Why?" "To mix some concrete, of course," said Bob. At the house, Bob went inside to fix the radiators. "Ding-a-dong-a-ding-ding-dong," he sang, as he tapped the radiators with his hammer. "Nice music," Bob said. "But not as good as my bugle." Outside, Dizzy and Muck wondered what to do. "Can't you just leave the bugle somewhere?" said Muck. "I can't do that," protested Dizzy. Suddenly, Bob appeared at the door with a tin bucket. "Cement please, Dizzy," he said. "Are you sure?" gulped Dizzy. "Of course I'm sure," laughed Bob. "Here goes," sighed Dizzy. She poured a load of cement into Bob's bucket. Glug 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 clang. Bob couldn't believe his eyes when he saw his bugle covered in the cement. "How did that get there?" he cried. Muck and Dizzy pretended to be surprised. "I've no idea," squeaked Dizzy. "Me, neither," said Muck, firmly. "Oh, well," said Bob. "No harm done. I'll soon have it cleaned up." Back at the yard, Bob cleaned his dirty bugle carefully, wiping off the sticky concrete until it was as good as new. Then he gently put it on the ground in front of the workshop, while he called Rolly. "Can you come over here, Rolly? I need you to give me a hand," he said. "Okay, Bob," rumbled Rolly, as he moved forwards. But he didn't look where he was going. There was a terrible crunch. Rolly had rolled right over Bob's bugle. "What was that noise?" asked Bob. Rolly stared down at the flattened bugle. "It's your bugle, Bob," he groaned. "I'm so sorry. I've flattened it." Although Bob felt sad, he could see that Rolly was really very upset. "Don't worry, Rolly," he said. "I shouldn't have left it lying around like that. Anyway, all that blowing was beginning to make my cheeks ache," he added, as he bent down to pick up the flattened bugle. Tinkle, 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 went the broken pieces. "That's a lovely set of wind chimes," said Wendy, coming out of her office. "Just the sort of housewarming present I've been looking for." Bob smiled at the dangling wind chimes in his hands. "You know, there I was, thinking I'd made a bugle, when it was really a set of wind chimes. Here you are, Wendy, you can have these for your friends." "Thank you, Bob," cried Wendy. She gently shook the chimes. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. "Ah," sighed Muck. "Nice, quiet wind chimes. I quite liked the bugle myself, rumbled Rolly. The end.